Welcome to the Emblazers show, where B2B leaders are igniting revenue. I'm your host, Abby Kerr. And on today's episode, my co-host Tim Riesterer is speaking with Mike Rogers, the National Sales Director at Nelnet Campus Commerce. Now, as a sales leader, Mike was up against a set of challenges that might be familiar to you. His market, highly competitive, his buyers, extremely price sensitive, all of which makes it very hard to dislodge incumbents. So what is a sales director to do? Well, you'll find out in this episode with Tim and Mike. But first, a little background on Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers is the National Sales Director at Nelnet Campus Commerce, where he leads national sales strategy and works with institutions to modernize the financial experience in higher education. He brings more than 2 decades of experience in enterprise sales and solution strategy. Prior to Nelnet, Mike spent 18 years at Oracle, serving in roles ranging from senior sales consultant and solution architect to application sales manager. Across these positions, he built deep expertise in aligning complex technology solutions with executive priorities and long-term business outcomes. Mike began his career in consulting with Sync Solutions and is a graduate of Illinois Wesleyan University. We're excited to have him join us and share his perspective today. Let's go to the episode now.
Hey, we're joined today by the head of sales at a company called Nelnet, which you're going to find out more about as we go along here. It's Mike Rogers. And Mike, thanks for joining the Emblazers show. Our audience loves to hear from heads of sales and what's going on in your chair, especially as we're launching a new year. So thanks for being here.
Tim, it's cool to be here. I'm honored, and I look forward to a fascinating conversation with you.
So Nelnet, I think it's going to be a solution that maybe everybody, or at least everybody's kids, have touched in one way, shape, form, or another and didn't know we did. So why don't you tell the audience quickly about the solution, the market you serve, so they understand the selling environment in which you operate?
Absolutely. Tim, Nelnet provides technology within education, either the K-12 space or higher education, to facilitate frictionless payments. So unless you're at a public institution, if you are a parochial private higher education institution, you have to pay for a bit of that education. And in order to do so, most institutions don't want to have and onboard the expertise to deal with compliance and all the regs and legs that go along with moving money. That's where we enter the picture. So we integrate with systems of record, be they SISs in K-12 or higher ed, to facilitate that payment for tuition, fees, books, parking tickets, right? But everyone always pays their tickets on time. That's our station in life, Tim.
I'm having sort of PTSD, having just, graduated 4 girls out of college. And now I'm remembering all of those various money acquisition formats, I'll call them. And that's where the tickets go too. Is that a revenue stream at schools, or is it a necessary evil?
It is a bit of both. They would rather not generate that revenue, but since you're willing to provide that revenue, they'll gladly take it.
So talk to me a little bit so we understand like the selling team and the environment and how this market buys and what that means for the team you take to market.
Absolutely, Tim. What's interesting about what we do is that it is highly commoditized, right? We're used to making payments for just about everything in our life, be it shoes or shampoo. I spend a lot of money on shampoo, obviously. So in this space, there are lots of options. There are lots of angles. There's lots of competition. This is red ocean. That puts a particular pressure and strain on any organization, no matter what they're selling, if it's highly commoditized and highly competitive. Our folks end up, their intuition, their instinct is to negotiate on price first, forget about value, and that is not a recipe for longevity in any business whatsoever. So we take time to figure out other ways to maximize our utility and the revenue that we can drive. And quite frankly, Tim, some of what you do and what you talk about is directly impacting how we operate.
Well, I appreciate that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I think here's the key. If people thought, oh, I'm not in that market, I can't relate, everything you just said is highly relatable for just about every market these days. Commoditized marketplace, multiple competitors coming at you from maybe even unexpected places, and price being the starting point. So selling value, selling it in a way that's differentiated, that's the struggle. And I know you have an Oracle background. Was there anything in particular at Oracle that prepared you for this? Or it was easy back in the day when you showed up and you just said, it's Oracle?
Yeah, I that day was before my day. Everything was a bit of a dog fight. I spent about 18 years at Oracle in a number of roles, but ended up in a selling role. What was fascinating about Oracle was that there was obviously all sorts of external competition. There was also internal competition as well. So Oracle sells a variety of services. You are not just competing against the Workdays and the SAPs, but also the database guy, the middleware guy. So you, as an individual seller, had to have some guts, some courage, and some skill to prepare yourself for those competitive situations. And a year at Oracle is 2.5, 3 years anywhere else. So coming to a place like Nelnet, in terms of years of working, I'm ready for retirement after spending 18 years at Oracle. So that transition was fantastic.
Well, Nelnet got that experience. And now that everybody fully sort of grasps your background and the current situation and the position you're in, let's talk a little bit about how you have structured the team to operate in that environment. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you're developing the team for success in that environment. But what does your team look like right now? And even help us out with understanding like the price point and the sales cycle and things like that.
Sure, Tim. The makeup of the team consists of 3 primary segmentations. We have our acquisition or net new sellers. We have our expansion team who look after existing customers and clients, looking to expand those relationships and retain those customers. And then a smaller but very powerful group are our solution consultants. So as we all know, salespeople are primed and compensated to initiate new or expand existing relationships. No question about that. But there's someone within the organization who should be responsible for the optimization of that which has been sold and promised. And that's our customer success group. So those are the 3 groups. That striation makes sense in what we do because we aren't selling the hottest, latest, coolest thing in which no one's competing right with us in. We have a thing that other companies have, and we have to bring a certain dogma and a certain expertise to the segmentations of our customers or the market as well. So those 3 alignments of our folks help us to focus where we need to focus.
So specifically, there are business development, net new business development team carry that number. And then the existing customer retention expansion team carries that number. There's a handoff in there.
Correct.
Different companies are taking different tacks on this. What finally pushed that one over the line to say, we're going to keep those numbers separate. We're going to have those teams run separately. Was there sort of a moment of truth, of some experimentation? And then how did you land on this?
There was an analysis of where the majority of our revenue is sourced. On any given year, about 70% of our revenue comes from existing customers. So that team is bigger. It is larger. It is double the size of the business development or net new team. Because of the commoditized market, because of the pace at which higher education runs, we have time and runway on those new client acquisition motions to take a different approach. There is no losing sleep over trying to retain an existing customer. You have 70% of your revenue coming from your customer base. That's something that you should be up all night thinking about. So it only made sense to maintain that model, keep that model. There was some experimentation with folks combining that role and having net new and existing, and that's just a recipe for endless worry and concern because any great salesperson has a preference. They either want a challenge of executing a new contract and generating a new relationship, or their skills allow them to really maintain and deepen and foster relationships that will lead to additional revenue and mutual benefit for both entities.
So Mike, I appreciate that process to get to the structure, let's talk about the buying experience and the buyer, just so again, people can relate, because what we're going to find out from you is how are you adapting and addressing the modern buying environment. For you, I understand it's pretty RFP driven. Again, I don't think that's news. I don't think that's unique. A lot of our audience is going to be like, tell me, how do you succeed in an RFP driven environment? But maybe validate that and tell us some more.
Sure, Tim. That is correct. RFPs are still king in our segment of the world and selling. What's different than maybe 20 years ago when I had a head full of hair is that there's less time now to share your magic, your secret, your value, right? Be it differentiated or not. We're dealing with a much more sophisticated buyer. And with the advent of AI, buyers have access to way more information than they ever have before. That creates an environment that is as challenging as it's ever been. I can recall later 90s, early 2000s, and having the opportunity to sit knee to knee, face to face with someone to deliver the message, the story, the value proposition, because that was the only way that they were going to get it. So I had that personal opportunity and experience, and I could leverage that to influence the buying process faster, shorter, more dense. Let's just work around your procurement process and get a deal done. That's not the case anymore. We, as sellers in this environment, we're more or less called to the table versus being able to set and address the table. So that's a very, very different world than I grew up, and different than anything I think we've ever seen before.
I don't think I made this phrase up, but I like to call it the modern pre-convinced buyer. Like they've done, at least they think they've done a lot of homework, and they probably have consumed a lot of information. Now, whether or not we think that they're accurate when they assess how far along in the decision process they are, I think sometimes they delude themselves. They feel that way just because of all the information and stuff they've processed by the time you show up. How are you adapting your team, the way they engage, how they sell, how they stand out in an era where the buyer is more informed, more convinced, and you're still trying to break through?
The first thing that I advise any of my sellers to do is pause. The reaction that is most common to most of us is to respond, right? We listen to respond and not to understand. So I tell them, pause, take a minute. And Tim, here's an interesting riddle for you. Think of the fastest car that you can think of, Ferrari, Lamborghini, F1, whatever it is. What system on that car, one of the most forgotten systems that makes it go fast? A lot of people say, oh, it's the fuel mixture, the engine. No. It's all great. The most important one are the brakes. You will not go as fast as you can unless you know you can slow down. So getting people to pause, to relax, to think things through, to see their own biases, right? To understand the emotion that's been conveyed, perhaps. It's very critical, very important, because from there, we can derive a way to move forward. And it's not the way that you've done it before. So that's step number one in what we're doing.
Well, I love that analogy. I think that's interesting because our research has shown that if the first thing to do is understand the process they've been through and really appreciate what they think they've done, and then be able to maybe fill in some gaps and some cracks from there, but let them explain in detail the process they've been through to get to the place they are, because it's in there that you find opportunity, because they will have missed a step or two that you can help them with. So that is different to think about. I'm not here just to show you why we're different than anything else you were looking at. I'm here to understand, how are you processing the possibility of change, and what does that look like? I don't know. Does that resonate? Absolutely.
It's in a more academic way of saying, Tim, it's the difference between classic economics and behavioral economics. So classic economics says all rational beings will make a very well-founded decision that is in their self-interest, right? They will use the facts and the facts only. Great. That's great on paper. What happens in real life is our biases are into the picture, our emotions into the picture, social influence enters the picture. And so we may not fully understand the position, the experience, the prior experience, the current experience of any buyer unless we pause and listen and evaluate. Because as you said, there will be insights. And it's important to gather that information and to check ourselves. Have we asked the right questions? Are we bringing the right insights to that conversation? If not, there's always time to step back and recalibrate, whether you know it or not, whether that's comfortable or not. You're not going to win every opportunity, and a healthy pause to reset will not likely cause you to lose an opportunity. It won't. So don't be afraid of that. So a bit of the behavioral economics is what we're introducing into our sellers and their emotions, and understanding their need to disrupt that escalating commitment that a buyer likely has because of what they've seen or read or what they believe or what they feel.
How do you then institutionalize that? Do you have to break any old habits? And if so, how do you guide this to be a regular thing that happens, as opposed to just, hey, I hope you reflexively do this? But yeah, tell me how you make that a reality inside of a sales team. Is your team pretty tenured, and is this a habit you have to break, or what does that look like?
We've got a mix. We've got people who've been here for a decade at least. We've got some people who've been here for 6 months. So the habits and behaviors cover the spectrum. One thing that is consistent amongst them, though, is that they have a tendency to bring an old model of selling forward, which is product first, feature first, function first. And you're not going to overcome an escalating commitment or doubt or any of those things with feature function sort of propositions. So one of the most important things is to get our sellers to understand, if they truly understand the various levels within an organization. For us, it's higher education. Do you know at least 3 levels? Do you know who's running those levels? Do you know what the challenges and opportunities are for those levels? Can you create a story, top to bottom, bottom to top, that unifies that information that you've learned so that you can connect the various aspects of the organization? And it's likely that whoever the buying influence is that you're talking to, that you have an opportunity to act as an advisor and guide them through what other parts of the organization are doing or what they're thinking or how they're acting. Because institutions, quite frankly, in higher education are like small municipalities, right? They're big, they're bureaucratic. So the chance that any one person knows everything that's going on, very, very low. So if we can form a perspective, and that's one of the things is I tell my folks is always have a perspective, not that you have to share it immediately, but always have one, and use that against what you're hearing to formulate a hypothesis, right? That's how we want to react and get away from some of the old habits of, well, we've got a solution and it's cheap and it'll fix all your problems and it'll even grow your hair if you happen to have that problem.
I love that. And I love this idea that, well, I don't love the idea that they bring an old model, but you can see it coming. And that means you can do something about it. And I think that's where we've been tricked a little bit into thinking that the customer has all this information at their disposal and they are more informed than ever. And that means they know exactly what's going on in their situation. And I've been saying that, no, now they're completely, entirely overwhelmed. And the salesperson needs to add different value. Just telling them what they already know because they had access to it doesn't add value. What adds value is to your point, bringing a perspective and a hypothesis, because I like to say, salespeople, you've seen more people who look like that person than they have. Like they're in one institution or one organization trying to keep the wheels on, keep it together. You come in having seen this many, many times before. So there's an opportunity to present a hypothesis based on seeing other people who look like them. And yet we sometimes go in there and act like we're a product showman, or we're going to ask 20 questions of which we should already know the answers to.
What if your next big revenue move didn't come from a blog post or a cold LinkedIn scroll, but from a real conversation with leaders who've been there?
As the world of sales is constantly evolving and constantly changing, I think it's even more critical to get together with people to understand how are they helping to solve some of the problems that our buyers have today.
Meet Emblaze, a community of sharp B2B minds, CROs, CSOs, rising stars, sharing what's actually working in sales, enablement, and customer growth.
We always find a lot of value in the partnerships that we're able to form with some of the other great organizations that are part of the team here. And personally, I love the opportunity to connect with my peer group outside of other organizations and learn from them and try to figure out if there's things that they're doing that we can pull into our organization and benefit from.
Join a monthly forum, dig into science-backed strategy, and get insight you won't find in your feed. Start your Emblaze journey today at emblazegrowth.com.
So with all that, Mike, we've just recently launched into a new year, and everybody ran their kickoffs, and everybody had a theme. I did 8 kickoff keynotes this year, and there's probably only 2 themes. Everybody uses the same things. It's something about driving forward or moving out or whatever it is. I'm sure you had one, but after everything we just talked about, like, what did you bring to the table? What did you have your teams bring to the table this year at kickoff that you're expecting to make a difference in 2026?
One of the advantages of a kickoff is the retrospective that I'm sure every sales leader does, right? Last year, our prior year, was one of those years where Q4 was insane, crazy. We needed all the heroic efforts to get us across the line to get that number. And every year, January, or whenever your new year starts, you say, we're not going to do that again, right? And, chances are you will. But one of the things that we did was really to assess the skills and the deficits of our sellers, to figure out where we needed to focus, where we were strongest, where we were weakest. And that was insightful. It was very insightful. And at our kickoff, we focused on the most common weaknesses that striated the team. And so let's start here. In sales, I think many of you know, your strengths are your strengths. Fantastic. But your weaknesses can hurt you tremendously. So that is where we decided to focus. And one of the material things that came out of our training that we had at the sales kickoff was a concept that we previously talked about, the triple metric, right? Understanding the various levels within any given organization, the drivers, the fears, the challenges, the opportunities. And each conversation that I or one of the sales leader on my team has with an individual contributor begins with a triple metric. That is to assure each and every one of us that we're not having a theoretical conversation, that we're having something that's based in fact, not fear, not projection, but fact, that our sellers have taken time, deliberate time, to understand the organization, top to bottom, bottom to top, and have a perspective. Without that, their opportunity is more a hope or a wish than it is an application of skills and thoughtfulness.
So I love that, because several things you said there. Being able to document what you believe the business impact is going to be on the acquisition side, and then for your customers, documenting the actual impact you have or have not had, changes the conversation. Now, all of a sudden, we're looking at outcomes, we're looking at impact, we're looking at results, and that creates fact-based conversations, not theory, but it also tamps down the tendency to go to the product side too fast. If we can all sit around the table and agree on what metrics matter to department A, to the larger institution, and to whatever stakeholders. So that's powerful. Was that a transition for your team? I mean, were they able to quickly go, oh yeah, I can fill in these blanks. I've just been holding out, or is this a real new muscle for them to develop?
This was a new muscle for most of them, and perhaps other sellers and their teams are different. But on my team, It is this desire to lean into a product to solve a problem and not step back from that to see if there's actual alignment. One of the other things, Tim, that I'll tell you that we've been very intentional about is reminding our sellers that you will not and cannot win every deal. And where you spend your time is more important than almost anything else. So if you cannot take a step back and gather the fact-based information that striates an organization, if you can't do that, then how can you convince anyone that this is an opportunity worth pursuing? So what we're doing is almost as important as where we're doing it. So all of that is new muscle. Our organization had the habit, and we're still breaking this habit. We see an RFP and we say, we're going to respond. No one's read it yet. No, there's been no analysis. They just see an opportunity and dollar signs, and in comes the hope and the wish and the dreams and the new pool that the kids want in the backyard, and off we go. Escalating commitment, right, Tim? So yeah. We internally, we had to look in the mirror and say, are our motions architected for the most likely outcomes, or are we bringing too much hope into the equation? And so that was a part of the deliberate decision to carve a new way, pave a new way for us.
So any other particular gaps that you were able to identify, hone in on, and you're looking to either you trained at kickoff or you're looking to elevate over the next few months or quarters?
Yes, absolutely, Tim. One of the ones that applies to the customer success team that I talked about earlier is that they've been wonderful at delivering results. I do Scream Success, results, 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 case studies, proof, evidence, right? We don't do a great job of documenting that. We'll go out and get a testimonial that says, I love working with this company. They're fun. They're great. Okay. So what? Who cares? So that's a whole nother avenue that we're pursuing. And if we do that correctly, Tim, if we do that well, that becomes a self-sustaining fire, if you will. The results speak for themselves. The customer's voice in that amplifies that. And then we have a thing that screams that we might be for you without having to race to the demo, right? So pushing those demos, those product introductions off a bit, understanding the position, the striation of our prospective buyers or existing customers, and confirming perhaps their beliefs, their escalating commitments to our process because we've created that environment to do so.
Yeah. I mean, on the front end, if you do a better job at articulating and creating a point of view around the potential business value that creates enough energy to change, that should then flow into customer success because it's like, oh, we all agreed to do that. Now let's track whether or not we're doing that. And I think there's always this like delegation of that to the customer, thinking that the customer's got the same self-interest, so they're going to sit there and document these results. And I think that's a misnomer. In many cases, they change out. They're not the same players. And also, you're the one who needs to document the results the most for renewal and expansion. So I think that developing that muscle on a customer success team that was maybe, I don't know, if they're like most, just trying to generate customer sat scores, CSAT or NPS scores. And it's like, no, what you really need to do is document results, get a scorecard. That should go hand in glove between business acquisition and expansion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's fascinating, Tim, is that one of the mindsets that accompanies all of that is we must be willing to defend our position in our relationship at any point in time. And nothing does that better than what we just said, and understanding the business value, keeping the foot on the gas of those drivers and documenting the results. That should be a continuous process.
Yeah. And you're not alone. So don't feel bad. The best technology companies in the world are in a position that they love their technologies a lot, and creating and articulating business value and then documenting and growing that business value is a new muscle for many of them. And again, it's where you can add value because the product is the product, right? At some point. So how's it going so far? Have you seen any results from that effort? Is anything changing? You want to bend the Q4 curve? I don't know. Any results or anything you're seeing and any impact early on?
Yes, there's a different diligence that has been appreciated. And that diligence obviously does not deliver results instantaneously. It doesn't deliver revenue instantaneously, but you can see people applying a different scrutiny to what they're doing each and every single day. So anytime I have a salesperson who says, I'm not going to pursue this opportunity for these 3 or 4 reasons. I don't know enough. The customer prospect, I can't derail their thinking. They're committed to something else. There's walls up. I can't get in. I applaud them. It takes courage to walk away from something that you believe or feel may be fortuitous for you, but the facts don't support that. So that's one avenue where we're spending our time is beginning to shift, and that's fantastic. The other one is that because of the different approach, you can see materially in our pipelines that we are creating bigger pipelines that are a little further out. There's less magical thinking. There's less, this deal is going to come in next week because I believe it and I feel it. And, my mom said so, right? There's less of that, significantly less of that. So you can see the evolution beginning to happen. And I know and believe that the quantitative results will be there, maybe a little earlier in Q4 this year as opposed to December 29th.
So Mike, this time always goes too fast. What a great sort of flowing conversation. Love to see the grasp that you have on this opportunity and what you're all doing there at Nelnet. And I'm sure our audience benefited from everything we talked about. But before we go, I'd be remiss if I didn't have you share any sort of time-worn eternal truth that heads of sales need to hear from you. And I'll give you that opportunity. I hope I didn't put you on the spot.
There are 2 maxims that I live by and I would recommend for any sales leader, especially those who are at one end of the spectrum or another, whether you're relatively new or you've been in the game and you know everything there is to know. Those are the 2 that probably need to hear this most. Number 1, most importantly, invest in your people. From a educational, training, enablement, technological perspective, invest in your people. Because if you don't, someone else will. Number 2, if you aren't studying behavioral economics now, you should. Get a book, get a magazine. There's plenty of material out. Read about it. You will see the clear connection to everything that you do and what we do. You will see the opportunity. Something as simple as nudge theory, subtle interventions to help people to make a determination, an outcome, a choice that will maximize their utility and perhaps yours as well. Something as simple as that. So read up on behavioral economics and invest in your people, spend those dollars one way or the other, and things will be good. Things will be good.
Well, I've parlayed an entire career up against behavioral economics. So I'm with you on that one. And our company does training. So thanks for that. I'm down with both of those recommendations. But as much as anything, I think just understanding that this is still a human to human thing. I know sometimes people go B2B, it's rational, it's logical, it's ROI and TCO. And the reality is it's people helping people get to a decision, which is super emotional. So I love that that's a part of your mantra as you develop your teams. With all that, I'm going to leave you with this, Mike. Gartner, which a couple of years ago put out a survey that said that most B2B buyers want a rep-free experience. Do you remember that? If you've seen that. And that number was getting up there and up there and up there. This year, they just came out with a new number, and they said themselves, in a stunning reversal, people now want to prioritize human interactions over AI in their complex B2B decisions. 75% of buyers want to prioritize human interactions over AI. It's a complete flip from the numbers they were saying who wanted a rep-free experience. So yay for all of us. There's still a job to be done, but it means what can we as humans where can we add the most value in the loop? And I think you've hit on all that today. I don't know. What say you about that statistic?
It tells me, Tim, that the AI overlords will have to wait at least another year before they take us all out.
And guys like you and me, we might be done by then. So, okay. No. Mike, thanks so much. It's been awesome. We had a little fun too along the way, and continued success for you and Nelnet.
Thank you, Tim. It's been an absolute pleasure, and look forward to speaking again.
Thank you for joining us for this great episode. Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you, as always, Tim. And thank you for listening on your favorite podcast app. Did you know that Emblaze, the Emblaze community by Corporate Visions, has a brand new website? Find us now at corporatevisions.com/community to learn more about what goes on inside this membership. We would love to have you join us.